How y'all doing this evening? I can't hear you. There you go. Would you all please stand and join me in the Lord's Prayer. Start this off. Who is it that helps us with our hurts, hang-ups, and addictions? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you. That's right, Bill. Good evening. I'm a Christian in recovery from alcohol, and my name is Mark. I was born to Christian parents, Sarasota, Florida. Neither parent was an avid drinker or a user of any substance of any kind. We attended a Baptist church when I was young, sometime between the years of 5 and 7. My parents' relationship descended into chaos and eventually ended in divorce. Unbeknownst to them, I bore the weight of this chaos and separation and blamed myself for the divorce. Like a 5 and 7-year-old can really be blamed for a divorce, right? Well, because of this, isolation, manipulation, lying, anger, and acting out became my weapons of choice, if you will. My father remarried to my stepmother, who was Catholic. One week I'd attend Baptist service, another week I would attend Catholic service. I mean, I was so confused, I went up to stand up and pray, and we were supposed to be kneeling on the bench. It was neither Catholic nor Baptist. It's like Ray Stevens said, I was Baptist. But this confusion ultimately kind of pushed me away from God and the church and anything that had to do with religion, if you will. So throughout the years, in high school I wasn't with the partying crowd as much as I wasn't the mischievous crowd. However, the times I did drink, I got drunk. I never admitted anything was my responsibility. This is what I would call what I would come to call the but ifs and the what ifs, leading to my resentments. You know, we wouldn't have got caught in that stolen car if the guy driving hadn't driven through a neighborhood at 2 o'clock in the morning with the bass pumped up. It wasn't my fault that it was stolen. I was just riding in it. So I did a lot of justification throughout that process, throughout that time of my life. These ifs would rear something more sinister later in life. At the age of 17, I entered the United States Marine Corps. During my military career, alcohol led to several disciplinary actions against me. Go figure, right? I met my wife, Linda, in my last year in the Corps. When I was discharged from the military, I moved in with Linda, who was residing here in Lee County. I had started a job as an electrical apprentice. Linda had a son, Damon, and on March 27, 1998, Linda became my wife and Damon my son. While on the job one day as an electrician, there was a fight that broke out between two gentlemen, a carpenter and a carpenter. I'll try to say that 5 times fast, carpenter. And one of them pulled a knife. I was able to subdue the one with the knife. And when the deputies were there, one of the deputies said to me, "Why don't you try out the academy?" Okay, never thought of it. So I did. I now had 2 children, a wife, and was embarking on a brand new demanding career. I was coaching Little League and worked every hour I could to provide for our family. Throughout these years, life happened as it does with everybody. I saw some pretty nasty stuff in my career, both in dealing with society and dealing with the department itself. I took all those negative feelings, especially the anger, and pushed it down, telling myself I could use it as fuel to stay alive. It's kind of weird what we do to come home at the end of the day. And I began to drink to forget about my day, to forget about what was going on in my life, both personally and professionally. These were just some of the many justifications I used in my mind to justify my drinking. Never mind that I was isolating on the porch as my family ate, not even 20 feet away from me. I could see them through the sliding glass door, and I'm on the porch drinking beer. And in my sick mind, I'm thinking, they're ungrateful. How dare they eat without me? You know, as I sit out there and isolate and make myself angry. This is really how sick my thinking had become. When things were going good, I would accuse my wife of cheating on me, just so I could make myself angry enough to go drink. Because if I could make myself angry enough, that anger would drive me right to the store. I mean, come on, I wasn't the same guy I just took to Southwest Florida Addiction Services. I wasn't the lady I drove to the ER because she just overdosed and the ambulance was too far away. I wasn't them. I deserved my beer because of them. Pretty sick, right? I attempted traditional recovery programs on my own for the first time in 2007. I say attempted because the only thing I did was show up and then proceed to watch the clock and then leave once the hour was gone. I mean, 59 minutes and I was hoofing it out the door. I, had that, like my sponsor said, instead of taking the cotton out of my ears and sticking it in my mouth, I had the cotton in my ears and was watching my watch. And I also attempted therapists and psychologists to no avail. One night, the ifs came not by single spies, but in battalions, as I proceeded to drink myself into oblivion after dealing with some issues with my department. At one point, my department was called because my family was concerned, as anybody would be. I had a call. After several hours, my department called me on the phone, and I responded to them with several four-letter expletives and vulgarities and whatnot. I remember being told, "Yeah, just unload your weapons, we'll come talk to you." I'm, okay. So being the belligerent drunk I had become, I proceeded to my bedroom, retrieved one of my firearms, and then discharged my firearm from my porch into the ground. Yeah, it was pretty funny. I was so inebriated, I had no clue deputies had already started to come around my house. I eventually came out front and was subdued by my own SWAT team and taken into custody. Eventually, I bonded out of jail, or was bonded out of jail. Even after being released, my drinking did not stop. I knew I needed to do something, and I needed to keep busy. So in an attempt to stop drinking and keep busy, I needed to do something. I had no job. I couldn't go back to what I was doing, obviously. So having been a machine gunner in the Marine Corps, as you saw, and then in law enforcement for almost 18 years, I decided to keep the natural order of things, and so I made the most logical choice. I went to beauty school. That wasn't supposed to be a joke. Over the next year and a half, I made attempts at sobriety. After relapsing on March 22nd, 2018, I found myself back in custody for violating my probation for drinking. Yeah, go figure. I couldn't fathom what had happened, and I was utterly defeated. Excuse me. I was speaking with a fellow inmate in the next cell because of my previous job, I was not allowed in what they would call general population. I spoke how I couldn't even get a big book while I was in here in the jail. And this inmate, pay attention to this because you know how God puts people in your lives. This inmate said, "I don't have a big book, but I've got this recovery Bible. Do you want it?" Yeah, I said yes. And I honestly didn't even hear him say recovery Bible or the word recovery when he asked me. I knew I needed something to read, and Bible was about the best answer I could come up with at the time. And it was a Celebrate Recovery Bible. And a voice in my head told me, just start reading this book as you did with the big book, from front to back. So I did. I started at the copyright page and worked my way through that complete Bible word for word. See, I needed to get busy, but I had to get busy with my recovery. And I got busy with my sobriety, even though my circumstances at that particular time weren't favorable. But I wasn't just going to sit on my behind and do nothing. I was done living like that. I learned some things about Christ and how his grace is given to me by his death on the cross. 1 Corinthians 15, verses 2 through 4. By this gospel you are saved, if you hold firmly to the word I have preached to you. Otherwise you have believed in vain. For what I received I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, and that he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures. In prayer, I asked Jesus Christ into my heart. I had taken that next step. Immediately when I did so, I felt a weight lifted not only from my shoulders, but from my heart as well. The room brightened, it became brighter in there, it got warmer, and more importantly, I felt a peace I had not felt since my parents' divorce. Mind you, when this is happening, I was 42 years old. That happened when I was between 5 and 7 years old. Working the steps taught me true surrender through acceptance and forgiveness. There was a reason I opened with the Lord's Prayer tonight. And the reason was because I was unwilling to forgive trespasses against me. Whether I did it, you did it, or she did it, he did it, didn't matter. I had to deal with these trespasses. That was part of my vicious cycle of anger and dealing with resentments, which would lead to drinking. Learning his word also taught me how to let go and let him. And I learned I couldn't forgive anyone else if I wasn't willing to forgive myself. When I would start to become discouraged at my circumstances, I had but to remember this one passage in the Gospel of Mark. Go figure again. Chapter 4, verses 39 through 40. And I still will say this in my head throughout my day. He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still not have faith?" Reading this would reaffirm my faith in him. See, I was brand new at this whole thing with Christ in my heart and everything, and he knew it, and I would pray that. And forgive me, I'm new at this. He knew it all. Immediately upon release, I attended my traditional recovery programs and meetings. Some of my recovery programs were held at Grace Church at the Fort Myers Shores campus. The best one, there you go. Nothing like healthy competition. I renewed old acquaintances and friendships and learned of the Choose Your Recovery program within Grace Church from my friend Champ. See, Champ and I came into recovery together. Although, and I'll bet, I still had a little bit of research to do before I committed to mine. I was no longer holding on to those resentments or the ifs from my life. Having this new freedom from within allowed me to do things I had never done. I became involved in my program of recovery. Instead of sitting there and watching that clock and counting down, I got busy with it. I first started getting involved by finding a sponsor. Although my first sponsor was temporary, I still had one. If you don't have a sponsor, or at least a temporary one, get one. There's a reason they put that in the first 5 things up there. Get one, even if it is a temporary one. I had to work the steps by myself while I was in jail because of my circumstances. Nothing was going to keep me from recovering. My sponsor and I worked them again. When I speak to my sponsor, inevitably the conversation will lead to working a step. I have started working the steps again with a gentleman that I sponsor now. If you think you don't need a sponsor and want to sponsor yourself, you've got a maroon for a sponsor. And that was for all you Bugs Bunny fans, if anybody got that. Get phone numbers from within your recovery community. Use these numbers. I can't tell you how many times I've had to call someone, either whether it was to vent, get held accountable on my own stuff, or just say hello and check on somebody. That old cliche, there is no I in team, is so spot on when it comes to recovery. Yeah, you'll get the one smart aleck to say, "Oh, there's no I in team, but there's a me." Well, yeah, there is if you're dyslexic. I could go on with the cliches about teamwork. Bottom line is we can't do this alone. I couldn't do this alone. If I could, I wouldn't be standing up here talking to you all tonight. As I mentioned before, I have this new peace and freedom, which has given me a new courage. Not courage like I needed in the military or in law enforcement. However, courage in mending my relationships. One thing that I cowered away from. I have a relationship with my brother now that I thought was lost forever. He and I talk on the phone and can have a conversation. Yeah, he still gives me heck about doing perms, but hey, what are you gonna do? I have a relationship with my family. The ones I used to watch and eat dinner every night without me. My sons and I have a relationship now where we can interact and be a family. They can rely on me to do things that I said I'm gonna do. And my relationship with my wife is better than it has ever been. And she's sitting right down there. I love you. Not only has my wife stuck by me through this whole gambit of stuff, she supports me, and she herself has decided to come to Choose Recovery to work on her hurts and hang-ups. And she attends regularly. Like I said before, I became a cosmetologist. I also became a dual license as a barber. Oh, and if you ever want a humbling in life, Go back to school at 42 years old and see what your classmates are when they're all, just saying. And when you're the only male in there and you're known as the old man in the group. But I found, with Christ's guidance, I found a family-oriented Christian salon barbershop. Yes, it does exist. I work with some of the biggest hearts in the business. And the other day, now about 2 weeks ago, I was performing a straight razor shave on a new client. I'd never met him before. And our conversation at one point turned to the subject of recovery. He had just gotten out of detox that morning, and his mom brought him in. And we got to talking, and he told me that his girlfriend is awaiting open heart surgery at Lee Memorial due to her addiction, stemming from her addiction. And for the very first time in my life, I felt the need to pray for and with a complete stranger. I had never done that before in my life. Thank you. I immediately stopped shaving and said, "Can I pray for you and your girlfriend with you?" And we did so. And after praying, I felt like this young man and woman truly have a great chance. And then I began to tell him about the Choose Recovery program, which he had said he'd heard about it. I told him where we were at, our different campuses, and I invited him to our church out there in Fort Myers Shores because he lives in our area. My program of recovery consists of God, family, church, and traditional recovery programs. And I still have to deal with life on life's terms. However, with Christ, it is so much easier. Again, get a sponsor, use those numbers, get involved. I mean, I'm on a leadership team at the church. I cook every Sunday. And by the way, sorry, Central and Cape Coral, but we have the better breakfast on Sunday. Just saying. You have to come out and try it, Pastor. Is it biscuits and gravy this Sunday? And with this, thank you all. I'm going to close with this. I'm not perfect, but Christ is. God and I are still working on me. I still fall down with a large thump. But with my Savior's help, I can get up, brush myself off, and try again. By offering forgiveness, I can't change my past, but I most definitely can brighten my future. Thank you all.
So good. So good.